Today at the UN General Assembly in New York, President Donald Trump spoke. He said that global warming was a gigantic con. But the one thing that really stuck out was him talking about mass migration into European countries and how it means they are all going to hell. Let's hear him.
When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did, they repaid kindness with crime. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you, I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
Well, as ever with Donald Trump, you might think he goes a little bit over the top, but he always has a point. Let's have a look at a graph here of the European prison population by citizenship. Well, if you look closely, you'll see that in countries like Greece, over 50% of people in those prisons are foreign-born. So he did have a point. But that links in today to a story. Remember all the protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping over an alleged series of sexual assaults? Well, today, Hadash Kabutu, was sentenced to 12 months in prison on 2 counts of sexual assault. 1 count of attempted sexual assault, 1 count of inciting a girl to engage in sexual activity, 1 count of harassment, but without violence. And remember, one of the women involved in this was a 14-year-old girl. So that's just one example, but let me ask you the broader question. Is Trump right? Are European countries going to hell through irresponsible migration policies? Let me know your thoughts. #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I'm joined in the studio by Marcus Johnson, Managing Director of PCD Solicitors, by Joe Phillips, journalist and former press secretary to Paddy Ashdown, and Sir Reynold Jawardner, former Conservative Minister. Marcus, I'm struck. These are really quite serious offences.
They are.
That the man's been found guilty of.
Yes.
He gets 12 months.
Yes.
He's been on remand for 3 months. Given that probably he'll only serve 40% of the year, he'll be out in a few weeks.
He'll be out by Christmas. And it's a very, very sad indictment of the state of our criminal system and the sentencing system. It makes a mockery of everything. And I've worked in crime for most of my working life. And the deterioration that we've seen in the so-called justice system is terrible.
I mean, this is a very light sentence, isn't it?
Well, if you think about it, Nigel, for a sexual assault, a single sexual assault, it carries up to 10 years in prison. He's been convicted of 2 sexual assaults and an attempted assault, which equally carries 10 years in prison. The inciting a child to engage in sexual activity carries 14 years maximum in prison. If you add all of that together, you're up over 40 years there or thereabouts of what the maximum sentence could have been. Now, we know they're concurrent, they all put them together, which is, many people think that's hard to understand why. But to then commit those offences, having entered the country illegally, and receive 12 months, of which he'll be out in a couple of months, probably.
And apparently he said he wants to be deported, but no sign that he will be.
As a journalist, I always need to remember more in less time. And you know what I really hate? Taking notes. It wastes loads of time and you forget stuff. And that's where Plord comes in. This is the Plord Note, a sleek, pro-level AI note-taker that records and creates notes for you. Whether you're listening to a long podcast, stuck in a meeting, or on an important call, Plord captures everything at the tap of a button. Then it gives you a smart, structured summary with all of the key takeaways. It even recognises different speakers by their voice, and you can choose from bullet points, to-do lists, or even mind maps. Your data's safe too, with end-to-end encryption and global privacy compliance. And with Plord's built-in AI, you can search everything you've ever recorded just by asking a question. It's slim, magnetic, under 30 grams, lasts up to 60 days on standby, and over 1 million people are already using it. Hit the link in the description and use code GB10 for £10 off your Plord order. Save hours of time and never miss a detail again. Link in the description below.
There's no sign. He says that, but I think his lawyers have already started to work the system for his right to remain, because they've already talked about his mental ill health.
Oh, yes, of course.
And of course, that's always a block to deporting somebody. So the human rights issues will say, well, look, if you've got mental health issues, we can't deport you, so you then have to stay. And so that's the system that we have. So anybody who has the right lawyers will work out the way in which they remain in the country.
So I'm not going to ask you the political question of whether European countries are going to hell, but is our judicial system going to hell?
Well, I hope not, but it does seem that way. It's just that nobody's really got to grips with the problem. We've had forever a problem with the prison system. There's no rehabilitation in the system. People come out of prison and re-offend.
And they're even worse when they come out.
Worse when they come out. There's more and more offences and different types of offences, including online offences, which the courts, police are just not able to deal with. They don't have the manpower, the resources to deal with that problem. And of course, we've now got the massive immigration issue, of which for many, many years, I've dealt with a number of the grooming gang cases over the years, particularly in the north of England. Nobody's ever been able to speak about that problem for fear of being called racist. I know, and I've spoken with police officers, prison officers, probation officers, CPS lawyers, who, off the record, will say, look, we know the problem, but we can't do anything about it. We're scared to do anything about it. And that's lasted for years. And it's only the last maybe 12, 18 months where people have been able to open up and say, look, we've got a major problem here. We need to do something about it.
Well, a major cultural problem too. I mean, point about this, Randall. You know, this guy's defence was, well, I didn't know we weren't allowed to behave like this in the UK. Now, whether that's true or not, and if you certainly go back to the grooming gangs that Marcus mentioned, these are massive cultural divides and differences. I mean, is Trump right? Are we going to hell through irresponsible immigration policies?
Well, I certainly think that he is representing the views of many people who believe right now, for perfectly reasonable reasons, that actually immigration has been too high, particularly illegal immigration. A lot of people believe that, you know, people are playing the system, and we've just heard, the sense that people are playing the system. There's actually a lot of people who are legal migrants who also are furious with the migration system today, because they're looking at the fact that they've paid tens of thousands of pounds to come here legally. They're paid towards the NHS with a surcharge so that the British taxpayer isn't paying for their costs and so on. And they're seeing these people come on boats, being put up in hotels or houses, getting everything given to them on a plate. So this, I think, is a bigger problem than only British citizens who feel strongly about it. I think there are plenty of other people who feel strongly too. But there is a bigger point here, which is, you know, I think things have changed. And it's not just, you know, when I gave my maiden speech in 2015, I said that rights need to be balanced with responsibilities. I said that rights were not invented in 1998 when the Human Rights Act was created.
Certainly.
And, you know, I was thought of as a terrible right-winger then. Now that is a very moderate and a well-understood view. David Blunkett, Jack Straw. These are Labour politicians who invented this system who have now said, enough is enough.
Joe, it depends a lot, doesn't it? Let's be frank about it. Which countries these people come from?
It does, but I think Marcus put it very well when he said nobody's got a grip on it. And we know we've had, you know, the Inspector of Prisons in here, in this studio, not very long ago. We know that the prisons are overcrowded, there is no rehabilitation, that probation services and other services have been cut to the bone. We know that there has not been a grip on immigration, and the previous government were quite happy to put people in hotels and leave them there for years, hoping that nobody would notice. So a lot of this is stuff that has been building. But yes, you are right, Nigel, to a point that it does depend where people come from.
Because the problem is cultural.
Well, some of it
women are treated in a very different way in Afghanistan, for example, to what we would think reasonable here.
Women are treated appallingly in Afghanistan, but you would send women back to Afghanistan.
I'd send the men first.
Well, yeah. But, you know, I've lived and worked abroad, as you know, in the Middle East, and I have never felt safer than when I was in Syria and Jordan. Actually, much safer. And I found people very respectful and, you know, helpful and nice, and I was never concerned at all. So some of it does depend on the cultural thing, but it also is about how you can either get people moved on quickly or integrate them properly. But what we have failed to do is neither of those.
But we have groups here that don't want to integrate. We have groups here that actually want us to adopt their way of life.
Well, we have groups here who need to be sent on a plane because they've come here illegally and they should be processed offshore. And, what is criminal is whether you like it or not, the Rwanda scheme was there, and there are actually Labour politicians now advocating something very similar. That scheme would have allowed people to be processed offshore.
Well, it would have done, Ranald, but, remember the Rwanda scheme?
Yes.
And what happened? A judge in Strasbourg at 10 o'clock at night said, no, are we ever, unless we change completely the human rights system, going to deal with any of this?
No, in a word. But also you mentioned and referred to the other countries where you felt safe. But have a look at what their sentencing regime is in some of those countries. You commit an offence in those countries, there's severe consequences.
Yeah.
You commit horrific sexual offences in this country and you perhaps spend a couple of months in prison. I mean, the chap today, with his sentence, £187 victim surcharge.
Yeah.
Well, a motorist would get more than that for breaking the speed limit.
Marcus, is that assault, I think, happened in July. So it was very quick going to court, wasn't it? And there are people out there right now who have been waiting years for rape and sexual assault cases to come to court. So, you could argue that this has been fast-tracked because he was an illegal migrant asylum seeker, and it was very, huge publicity. Meanwhile, there are people, either accused people or victims whose lives are in limbo and they are waiting years for these...
No, that can happen, but equally, Lucy Connolly was in court very, very quickly indeed and got a 31-month sentence.
But it's that two-tier system that we have.
So this is the one thing that the Prime Minister clearly hates to be said. You're telling me you believe we're living in two-tier justice?
We do. We see this time and time again with Lucy Connolly and the tweets. And it was the people accused at that time, fast-tracked through the system, all encouraged to plead guilty, all got severe sentences. How does somebody get 2.5-year sentence for putting out a tweet that's then retracted, and somebody gets 12 months for severe sexual offences
which
against
could lead
a
up
child?
to 14 years in prison.
Which... nobody could make sense of that. So we do have a two-tier system that we see time and time again. And that has to stop because it's not benefiting anybody.
Marcus, do you have faith in the new Home Secretary, who seems much tougher?
Well, not really, because nobody's getting to grips with the problem with the prison system. Because there is a huge... the prisons are full. But... the only way of solving the prison problem is just stop detecting crime. And if you double the police force, you double the number of people caught, you need double the prison places.
Yeah.
It's an ever-increasing problem that the governments are afraid to deal with because it doesn't have the resources and it's not a vote winner to say there's now more and more people committing crime. It's a vote winner to say we've now cut down on crime.
But it's the truth. The public deserve the truth.
They do.
Well, Marcus, can I say thank you for coming in, your very frank assessment of this. Now, we have a statement from our friends at the Home Office. Oh, yes. It is our long-standing policy not to comment on individual cases, but when foreign nationals commit serious crimes in our country, we will always do everything in our power to deport them. Well, that's very useful, isn't it? In a moment,